Thanks to everybody who's here. We've got a good conversation today with two good friends of mine, Hannah Garmon and Paige Thomas from the Alabama Historical Commission. So I just again want to thank everybody for attending your town's Lunch and Learns. If this is your first one, welcome. If this is not your first one, welcome back. We actually have one real big announcement to make before we get started. Your town has announced the dates for the 2022 workshop, which means this is the first workshop back in 2 years. The workshop will be at Camp McDowell as usual, starting on April 27th through April 29th. So y'all look out for the registration at your town's website or on your town's social media. It will be a great workshop, as they always are. So y'all please consider attending if you have not already attended a workshop. With that, I will give it over to Paige Thomas. She is the Certified Local Government Coordinator for the Alabama Historical Commission. And then from there, we'll go to Hannah Garmon, who is the Alabama State Historic Tax Credit Coordinator. So Paige, take it away.
Good day, everyone. I'm going to be discussing a little bit about the Certified Local Government Program that's with the Alabama Historical Commission. Hannah, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide.
Oh, yeah. You have to remind me. I'm driving.
With the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966, there was a federal and state partnership that was initiated, and it created a national preservation program. So this Certified Local Government Program extends that federal and state partnership to the local level. The CLG program, we assist local governments in trying to integrate historic preservation concepts and initiatives into local planning. The CLG partnership also enhances the local government role in preservation within the community. It strengthens this link between the Alabama Historical Commission, the National Park Service, and other federal programs to the local programs. Since preservation activity first occurs at the local and community level, the city or the certified local government is really in a great position to identify and protect their own resources. So when a city joins the CLG program, it's a very important and effective way to protect not only those local resources, but also those Alabama resources as well. Hannah, if you don't mind going to the next slide. So to become a CLG, the first step in that process is to pass a historic preservation ordinance. The purposes of the ordinance are to provide for the establishment of historic preservation commissions and architectural review boards, to promote educational, cultural, and economic welfare of Alabama's cities. They do this through the preservation and protection of buildings, sites, objects, areas, districts, any places of interest, through also the preservation and enhancement of national, state, and local, also archaeological sites, and other aesthetic heritage that's found in the community. So it also, through the promotion and enhancement of those Alabama's historic and aesthetic attractions, it helps with tourism and economic development. So the state enabling legislation is the one the legislation establishes and sets out what should be included in a historic preservation ordinance. Hannah, if you don't mind. Next slide, please.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. Oh, sorry, go to the previous one. There we go. A Historic Preservation Commission, it's an administrative body, and their role is to protect, promote, and educate historically significant buildings, structures, sites, monuments, and objects. So the historic preservation should dictate things like the composition of the Historic Preservation Commission, including nomination of members and officers, sets terms of office, also outlines any removal or vacancies, other roles, personnel that would support the Historic Preservation Commission, and also outlines an annual report that's due every year. The ordinance also establishes the Historic Preservation Commission being a nonprofit entity. It outlines the powers and duties of the Historic Preservation Commission, And it also outlines the steps to designate a property or a historic district. The ordinance gives directions on public hearings, notifications to property owners, proposed recommendations given by the Historic Preservation Commission on historic designation of properties. The ordinance also explains what a certificate of appropriateness is, which is the document that approves work being done in a historic district. And then also it outlines the applicability to local projects, between local projects and federal projects, and how that Historic Preservation Commission is involved. Next slide, please. Here we go. Thank you. I think it's really important to distinguish the difference between the Alabama Register, the National Register, and also locally designated districts. Property owners really get confused with this, and so does developers, kind of anyone outside the office or outside preservation. The Alabama Register of Landmarks and Heritage recognizes Alabama's historic places and encourages their continued preservation. The register documents things such as building, objects, sites, structures, districts, and other cultural landscapes in Alabama that have historic integrity and significance. This designation is honorary, meaning there's no kind of parameters set on your property once it's listed. There are also no financial incentives that go along with the listing on the Alabama Register. The Alabama listing for the Alabama Register, it does not automatically place you on the National Register of Historic Places. Now, on the other hand, all properties that are listed in the National Register of Historic Places in Alabama are considered listed on the Alabama Register. So then the National Register of Historic Places, which is also sometimes referred to just as the National Register or NR, is the nation's official list of cultural resources that's worthy of preservation, that's 50 years or older. So as a CLG, that city has the opportunity to participate in the National Register process by reviewing nominations that are properties within that city, and then making a recommendation on whether or not they think it meets the criteria to accept and be on the National Register to the State Historic Preservation Office, which is the Alabama Historical Commission in our case. So once these nominations, if they're recommended by the CLG, a review board examines the nomination at the state level and makes recommendations to the SHPO. And if it's recommended for listing, then the nomination is sent to the National Park Service. Now, a National Register listing does not restrict what you can do on your property, much like the Alabama Register. However, one of the things it does do is it makes you eligible for some financial incentives, such as historic tax credits. There's other things that you need to meet, and Hannah's going to talk a little bit about tax credits in the next presentation. Also, if federal funds are involved in a project that affects the property listed on the National Register, or if it's determined to be listed on the National Register, there's an environmental review process called Section 106 that's conducted. Basically what it does is it reviews the project to see if there's any kind of detrimental outcomes because of the project, and sometimes mitigation measures are taken because of this. It could be a mitigation measure such as putting up signage that tells you about the site beforehand. It could also be repurposing materials. So there's kind of a wide array of what mitigation measures are taking place, but it doesn't necessarily stop a project. So the thing that probably affects the CLG the most is having local designation of historic properties. So local designation of historic property occurs when a city adopts an ordinance to designate a property or a district historic. So these properties may or may not be listed on the National Register. All that's required is that a survey is done for the property that's being proposed to be locally designated. After a property has been designated locally, there's also typically a zoning overlay for historic districts that's usually incorporated into the zoning ordinance. So the overlay basically states that you have to meet the historic preservation requirements or design guidelines that are set forth. These design guidelines are established by the Historic Preservation Commission or a delegated architectural review board. who reviews those applications for certificates of appropriateness. So the HPC, or ARB for short, reviews projects that are in those locally designated districts. They look and see if they meet the outline design guidelines that were adopted by the city. Design review is also a tool that really ensures revitalization of an area. It helps to maintain the sense of community and sense of place. It maintains a little bit of consistency in that area as far as projects are concerned. A lot of people view design guidelines as being prohibited, and I think the best way to view them is that they give parameters that are going to help hold not only the historic integrity of the area and the cultural integrity of the area for the city, but they also ensure that your property values are going to be maintained. And if you don't mind going to the next slide. Thank you. So there's several steps in becoming a certified local government. There's about 5 total. First, it has to establish a commission, and that's usually done through a local preservation ordinance. The city also must enforce legislation that's appropriate for historic designation and the protection of historic properties. They must also maintain a system of historic inventory, and this can be done through surveys that are maintained, photographic evidence. The city must also coordinate through the HBC, coordinate local participation in preservation activities. So that's giving public notice on those historic preservation commission and or architectural review board meetings, making sure that there's any new districts that are proposed to be established. The public has input, specifically the property owners in those districts. One thing that as the Alabama Historical Commission makes a requirement for CLGs is there's an annual report every year. It usually comes up after the fiscal year is ended, and it outlines such things as any changes to the ordinances, any additional members or membership changes on the Historic Preservation Commission or Architectural Review Board. It also notes if anything was newly designated to be in a local district, or either if there's a new National Register property or district on there. So one thing that I think in becoming a CLG, many people think is you have to have a design review board. You do not have to have any kind of design review to be a certified local government. There are several, if you don't mind going to the next slide, Hannah. There are several benefits of being a CLG. So CLGs provide preservation leadership, and that's done through the surveying and identifying and protection of historic resources. CLGs also have access to technical services through the Alabama Historical Commission, and also through different organizations such as the National Alliance for Preservation Commission. CLGs are also able to participate, like I mentioned, in federal processes like the National Register for Historic Places, and to give comment and receive notice on Section 106 environmental reviews. But I think the best benefit of a certified local government is that there are funding opportunities just for those CLGs. Hannah, if you don't mind, thank you. On top of it, through the Historic Preservation Fund of the National Park Service, also known as an HPF, and this is administered through the Alabama Historical Commission. The state has a portion of funds that it's allotted every year, and those funds, some of those funds have to be passed through to the certified local governments. Annually, a grant application can be made to the Alabama Historical Commission. Once applications are in, they're reviewed and they are scored to see if it meets the qualification. All projects have to meet the Secretary of Interior standards. They also have to meet professional qualifications. They're also kind of an outline of the types of preservation projects that can be funded by the grants. I've listed out several. One are surveys. Surveys are a great tool, not just to have inventory of your historic property, but it's really great for a city that's going through a planning process. I know there's several right now in Alabama, a couple of CLGs that are kind of going through and doing some comprehensive planning and master planning. And they can receive grant funding to help do surveys of their different districts and things like that to help with that preservation planning process. Another thing is National Register nominations. To nominate different districts or areas, you do have to have a professional that meets the requirements, as I mentioned. Another good thing that the grant supports is training for commission members. This can be attending webinars. I think one of the good things, in a way, if you want to say good, that came out of COVID is the fact that I see a lot more access to training opportunities and webinars, which is great because as a CLG, your Historic Preservation Commission members or ARB members really need to attend at least one training a year, make sure that they're staying up on just the new things going on, and even just reinforcing basic principles of preservation. Another thing is preservation plan development and pre-development, development projects. A pre-development project can be doing a historic structure report to see on a historic building or structure what needs to be done, the current condition of it, and how to remedy any kind of things that are deteriorating. So that's a great tool with the grant. Another thing is public awareness and education. On this slide, the city of Foley recently did a project, and it's Foley on Foot. By foot, excuse me. It's a historic walking tour. It was geared more towards school-age children, but it's also adult-friendly. And it's wonderful because it doesn't just walk you through the city, but it's a little bit interactive with kind of, finding things like a scavenger hunt and also coloring, things like that. So like I said, again, anything has to be preservation related for this grant. It has to meet the Secretary of Interior's standards. It is a matching grant, meaning that the Federal National Park Service will match. They provide 60%, and then the CLG has to provide 40%. The good thing about that 40% is it doesn't have to necessarily be cash. It can be in-kind services, so volunteer services, donated time from commission members or consultants. So it can also, if another nonprofit wants to provide funds for the project, they can do so. So there's some options there if a city is limited on cash funds, that they can do another type of in-kind match. If you don't mind going to the next slide. So Alabama right now has 34 CLGs. We are really interested in growing that number. So if anyone knows of a city that might be interested in the CLG process and becoming a CLG, feel free to reach out to me. And if we'll go to the next slide. So here is my information, Paige Thomas at ahc.alabama.gov. Also have on there the Alabama Historical Commission website. It has links to not only the program that I help coordinate, the Certified Local Government program, but also our tax credit programs, which Hannah's going to speak on, our other architectural programs, the Alabama Register, archaeological programs as well. So feel free to reach out.
Thanks, Paige. Now I've got to get ready to talk. Like Collier said, I'm Hannah Garmon. I've worked at the Historical Commission now this month in a few days for 6 years, and I've done a little bit of everything while I've been here. I've coordinated the Alabama Register, I've also coordinated our cemetery program. I coordinate our architectural survey program, which Paige talked about a little bit. But my big hat that I'm wearing today, this keeps like just swapping screens. I don't know why. So if it flips, I'll flip it back. But so my hat I'm wearing today is the historic tax credit program for the state. And I'll also address the ad valorem program as well. So this was started several years ago in 2013. Our first tax credit program was started. And then in 2017, the legislation passed a new program. It is a 25% income tax credit on your qualified rehab expenditures. So those are going to be things like a roof replacement, foundation support or replacement, ADA compliance, those type things, those big ticket items, window repair, floor repair, like those big ticket items. So it helps defray the cost of those expensive rehabs. But the rehab work has to follow the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation. So this is basically certifying, saying that you rehabbed a building and it is still historic. So this project or this program is open to both owners of residential and commercial properties. I will make a disclaimer here. The commercial or the residential properties will be removed from the program on December 31st, 2022. So there's still a year left for you to be able to apply. Like I said, this is a $20 million program each year, and it does have a cap. We do accept projects, and those remain on the waiting list. For the first 9 months of each year, out of that $20 million, $8 million is set aside for counties and projects located in counties less than 175,000 in population. So after then, those 9 months, any of those remaining funds come back into the bigger 60% set aside counties. Those counties that are those larger counties, there's 7 in Alabama, and they're Mobile, Baldwin, Montgomery, Shelby, Tuscaloosa, Jefferson, and Madison. So those counties compete for $12 million for the first 9 months. So it keeps just flipping. There we go. The AHC, we review and take those applications, and then we send the qualifying projects to the Historic Tax Credit Evaluating Committee. The committee then ranks the projects in the order that they'll receive a tax credit evaluation. The AHC then reserves the tax credits based upon those committee rankings. So people receive them in the order that they are ranked. Those receiving a reservation must complete the project within 5 years. There's actually, it just keeps flipping on me. There's actually a couple of different benchmarks that you must meet. At 18 months, 18 months, you have to have spent at least 20% of your QREs. At 36 months, you have to at least spend a total of 70%, and then the project must be completed within 5 years. Once the tax credits are completed, you'll submit what is called a Part C application, where we then complete or review all of the work that was completed. So to be eligible for the state program, the property must be at least 60 years of age and must be listed in or eligible for the National Register. So if your property is not listed yet in the National Register, you can do what is called a determination of eligibility form. And that's basically where you fill in the history and information of your property, as well with usually a map and some photographs. And we can make that determination before you move forward with submitting a Part A and a Part B. There is a fee associated with the Part A and Part B, which I'll cover here in a second. So on the Part A, you usually fill in the information, like I said, about the property. You tell us if it's listed in or eligible for the National Register. You also give us a short physical description, a history, and the significance of the property, and you also include photographs and maps. So on the Part B, this is the more substantial portion of the application. You must describe the work of how it's going to be rehabbed. So you really should have your plans in place before you make this application. Now, I will say that work cannot be started before you submit your application. So there is some expense on the front end. You can count those plans and things like that as part of your QRE, but you must have those kind of in hand and ready to go. The Part B also, you include the property price minus the value of the land. You give us estimated start dates and completion dates. You tell us what your qualified and non-qualified rehab expenditures are. So those things like I was talking about earlier, like roof repair, window repair, are qualified expenditures. Fixtures, lighting fixtures, and plumbing fixtures, those are things that are not. And then the tax credit amount that you're requesting. That tax credit amount should be 25% of your qualified rehab expenditures. Also, you need to include current photographs of the property, recent photographs taken within the last 6 months. You also submit a site plan of the current floor plan or any proposed. You also submit a floor plan, a current one, how it is now, and a new one of the work and proposed that you're going to be doing. So on the Part A and Part B, like I said, there is a fee. That fee is based upon your qualified rehab expenditures. So say you have a project where the QREs are less than $1 million. Your fee is going to be 1% of that QRE. So say your QREs are $100,000, 1% of that is $1,000, and half is due when you submit the Part A and Part B application. That is a review fee for our office to review the work. So you would submit a $500 cashier's check with the Part A and Part B. So once that is done, we review it all, and then we send it to the Tax Credit Evaluating Committee. They then review and rank the projects, like I said, in the order that they are received the score. We then will send out reservation letters, or if you are a project and you're placed on the ranked list, we'll send you a deferment letter. Right now, we do have a ranked list of projects that extends into 2025. The program recently this year received an amendment that extended the program into 2027. So right now we're getting close to that end point of where once we reach that 200 mil cap for the program, we'll no longer be eligible to accept applications. So after you complete everything, your Part A and Part B, we review the work, it gets ranked, and you're done with your project. You have done everything. You complete what is called a Part C application. And this is where we certify the completed work. So you'll send to us new photographs, you'll send to us a certification, a certificate of occupancy. You'll also send to us, you'll include in the information your actual start date and finish date, your actual QREs and non-QREs, how many jobs were created post-rehab and during the rehab, if there was any housing units created. You also have to submit a cost and expense certification from a certified CPA that's saying, yes, all of these expenditures were how they laid it out. And then also an appraisal. And this is something people don't think about a lot of times, is your property value after you do these rehabs are going to increase. So part of the legislation laid out is that appraisal we send to the County Revenue Commissioner to reevaluate your property taxes. So after you complete a rehab, most likely your property taxes will go up because the property is now worth more. So I just had a few before and afters, and these are a couple of projects located within Birmingham. The first one is Bonton Hatters. You can see there on the left, they didn't have to do a whole lot, but they restored the storefront. They did a lot of work on the interior. The other one is Family Service Laundry in Birmingham. It's now opened up. They have some restaurants. They have, I think, some event space. They have other businesses that are in there as well. So one other thing I'm going to mention really quickly is the ad valorem benefit that a lot of people don't realize they have access to. And this is buildings that are listed in or eligible for the National Register of Historic Places. Most likely your buildings are being assessed at a higher property rate. So getting the ad valorem benefit can have your property then assessed at the lowest rate of 10% instead of one of the higher rates of 30 or 20 or 15. So that can help you a little bit on the back end after your project. But any building that is listed in or eligible for can apply for this benefit, the ad valorem. It's only for commercial properties because residential properties are already assessed at that lowest 10% rate. So there is just a really short application for the ad valorem benefit. You would then just submit it to me. I usually can just review it and issue the letter. If it's a non-listed building, it might require a little bit more work on your end, but it's still a possibility. So if y'all have any questions or comments, I would be happy to take those either now, or I'm happy to speak to you over the phone or through email. The tax credit can be complicated and it can be difficult. So a lot of times I do recommend that people speak to a consultant, even if they don't necessarily hire one. The Alabama Trust for Historic Preservation now carries a consultants list on their website. So if you're interested in that, you could reach out to one of the consultants on their website as well. One thing I did forget to mention is the Alabama state tax credit is refundable. So if your state tax liability is less than your credit, you would receive that back in a refund from the state of Alabama. So there's only about 3 other states in the nation that do that. So that's kind of one of the cool things about the state tax credit. So like I said, I'm happy to answer any questions, speak to you over the phone. So please just let me or Paige, either one of us, know if y'all ever need anything.
That's awesome. Thank y'all both for participating today and bringing us the wealth of knowledge that y'all have about these really valuable programs that the Historical Commission offers to Alabama cities and towns. I've got 2 questions. One, Hannah, you kind of answered already in your presentation about how buildings are qualified as historic. But if you don't mind, can you just run back through that real quick?
So the building would need to be either listed in already the National Register, and that could be at the individual level or as a contributing resource in a historic district. So there's lots of historic districts all over the state of Alabama. I really encourage you to go check out our website. It's under, and then the historic preservation map. Pretty much any National Register district or nomination individually is on that map. So you can see if your property is located in one of those districts, and then you click on it and then you have access to the PDF. So you can scroll, usually it's by address, and find your building to see if it's a contributing or non-contributing resource. Another thing that we can do is if your building is not listed, you can submit what we call the determination of eligibility form. It's basically that Part A application for the state program. You just aren't required to submit a fee. It's completely free. So if your building is not listed in, we can see if it is actually eligible for the National Register once you fill out and submit that determination of eligibility form. You don't ever actually have to be listed to take the state credit. You just have to be eligible for. Now, people a lot of times piggyback the federal credit as well as the state credit. The state credit's towards your state income liability. The federal is towards your federal income tax liability. So, they piggyback those. The federal one, like I said, is refundable and you don't ever have to actually be listed. The federal, you have to actually be listed and it is non-refundable.
Okay, thank you. And then we've got another question. Can a building be owned by a municipality, or excuse me, can a building owned by a municipality qualify for the historic tax credit?
I'm not exactly sure. So Kelly, what is her name? I cannot think of it. It just totally went away. Anyways, we can find that out for you. The short answer is yes. You cannot have, you have to file a state of Alabama income tax return. And that's the only way it would exclude a municipality, I think, or already receive money from the Education Trust Fund. A lot of times you're excluded then because that's where this money comes from. So if you receive funding from the Education Trust Fund for something else, then that property or for that property, it wouldn't be eligible to apply. So if we've had nonprofits ask this question, and the state revenue said, as long as they file a Chapter 18 state income tax return, they're eligible to apply. They just have to file that tax credit or
So-
that.
Yeah, so it'd be better if, say, a building was held by like a CDC or a Chamber of Commerce or a land bank or something like that.
Yes, it would be probably easier than Kelly Graham is the lady at Department of Revenue for tax related questions. I a lot of times send people to her because she's on the revenue side. One of the interesting things we do is like we never actually know if someone takes the credit. We get a number at the end of the year from revenue. We don't know who takes it and who doesn't because that's private information. That's your tax information. So revenue addresses a lot of those questions.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's all we've got from the attendees. But I do have one question that might have more of like an expounded answer. But could you provide an example of a town in Alabama that has utilized both the certified local government program and then kind of turn that into helping property owners or in their town utilize both the historic and federal tax credits?
So Decatur is a great example. Decatur has they're a certified local government. They have someone on staff who's a trained preservationist. And part of her job is to help commercial and residential people or property owners in Decatur apply for tax credits. We have like 7 projects in Decatur. They were first, of course, surveyed and had a National Register nomination done under the certified local government auspices. Bank Street is a great example. They're going in right now and doing an update to that National Register nomination because the period of significance for that district ended in 1941. Well, they have a tax credit project they were interested in on a building that was significantly changed in the 1950s. So we're having to go back in and look at updating that National Register nomination through a CLG grant to extend that period of significance, where then the property owner, a private property owner, is going to take advantage of the tax credits. So you're seeing it. Places in Birmingham do the same. Mobile, but Decatur is a great example of kind of a mid-size town. You know, they're not huge, but they have somebody on staff who are assisting people at the local level apply and utilize these tax credits.
Cool. All right.
Andalusia is another example too. They're not a certified local government, but the city of Andalusia has went in and bought several buildings that needed extensive repair. They're then turning around and selling them with the mindset that the developers will rehab them using tax credits. And we have 2 projects in Andalusia now that are doing that. So you're seeing this kind of economic change in and around the state. It's slow, but it's coming. It's there.
Is Andalusia like placing covenants on those buildings, requiring the developers to do something with them?
I don't know on Andalusia's end because we only work, really with the developers or whoever, but the city has hired a preservation consultant to come in, extend the boundaries of their current National Register district and update the period of significance. And they're taking on that cost themselves. They're not a certified local government, but they see the benefits in having and utilizing these tax credits for a growing, downtown district.
Yeah. Well, that's great. For those of y'all who are on here that are associated with small towns or local municipalities, I really encourage you to take a look at the Certified Local Government Program. It can provide resources that go beyond just grant funding for National Register nominations, but can help with preservation planning, preserving the character of your historic downtown, and then education for property owners and citizens to advocate for their historic buildings. But also like see some really cool examples, because it's not just Decatur and Andalusia. I mean, Atmore is going through a really huge change right now. Dothan's been able to take advantage of it. It's kind of a wave of protecting
And
the
Atmore
historic
is
downtowns and encouraging good development.
they're a new CLG, like within the past year, they were certified. So
Mhm.
like they're brand new, Prattville's brand new. And then you have larger cities like Montgomery, they're brand new, but they're a large city. So CLG, having a CLG in your community can really, it's for anybody and everybody. There's no limits on the size.
Paige, you were with the Mobile Historic Development Commission for a little while. Can you just talk about what that was like being on the municipal side of the CLG program?
Yes, certainly. So I was with the city of Mobile for about 4 years, almost 5. And then I was with the city of Birmingham for a year, working for their historic preservation departments. The city of Mobile had been a CLG for quite some time, and their history is kind of a long history. They started as a nonprofit. They moved into going under an umbrella with the city. And so the Mobile Historic Development Commission is made up of several commissioners from different organizations all over Mobile. And they do have staff at the city of Mobile that assists with the Mobile Historic Development Commission projects, and also serves to help the city. They have a separate architectural review board that reviews their certificate of appropriateness applications. I know a lot of cities in Alabama just have a historic preservation commission that reviews larger projects, but with the city of Mobile, and also actually the city of Birmingham, they had a separate design review committee that reviewed the certificate of appropriateness applications. Being a CLG, I talked with the state office all the time. I've gotten to know Hannah and Collier really well over the past 5 years, when Collier was previously in his capacity at the Alabama Historical Commission. One thing that it provides is technical assistance. Now, and that could be not just for the CLG program and training and staff, but also with tax credits. We had several tax credit projects going on with developers in Mobile, and we were able through our office to help complete some tax credits. So we were in touch with the state office several times on that. Also, in our capacity as a certified local government in a municipality, we were kind of that first point for touch of preservation. So a lot of times we got questions on tax credits, and we would help the best we could, but also refer to the state office and get them in touch with who they needed to talk to, whether it was the Alabama State Historic Tax Credit or the federal tax credits. We also had the certified local government coordinator come down to the city of Mobile and sit in on some of the architectural review board meetings. They were very helpful, the state was, when making sure and ensuring that those local municipality CLG programs were following the state enabling legislation. They were also wonderful because they helped give us feedback on what may help those meetings conduct a little bit more smoothly. Also, any kind of guidance on any kind of guidelines that were kind of out in the open on how to go. So not only is the certified local government coordinator a really good resource for municipalities that have historic preservation commissions and design review, it's just a good source in general for any kind of municipality that's dealing with developers. One of the things that I really should also probably encourage is local municipalities understanding that historic preservation work, like doing design review and also doing the tax credit projects that happen in cities, it's really all about, it's not just about protecting historic resources. It's also about economic development and the opportunities that having design review and ensuring that, say in a downtown district, new construction's going up. I know, in the mid-century, in the 50s and stuff, and before that, a lot of older buildings were getting knocked down. There's a lot of parking lots in downtown areas, and making sure that those areas in downtown that are getting either buildings are being rehabilitated or new construction of buildings are coming up, trying to ensure that they're not going to necessarily tower over another building where they don't need to be. Kind of have some sense of community in those new construction guidelines that help to transition some of these newer, bigger buildings in with the older kind of smaller story buildings. So it really, design review is a tool for economic development too. It's not just something to prohibit things, it's something that gives guidance, and that's why they're called design guidelines. And then also the opportunities that you have with historic tax credits and the sustainability. I think a lot of cities today want to look like they are, progressive and doing things that are progressive, such as, making sure that things go greener, quote unquote, whether that's, having a recycling process throughout the city and access. So I think that preservation really is an opportunity. There's several tools out there to help with economic development in cities and things like heritage tourism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, heritage tourism is a big thing. That's one of the things that we're dealing with here in Montgomery. But I like your point that historic preservation is about economic development. As a CEO for the National Trust, recently put it, historic preservation is about planning and managing change, planning for and managing change. Change is inevitable. We're going to see it across our communities, but we can also preserve our community's identity through these steps. And I really appreciate y'all taking the time and kind of highlighting some of the resources, some of the many resources that the Alabama Historical Commission has, just like the regional conservation and development councils, and like our next upcoming Lunch and Learn, the Alabama Communities for Excellence program. And their director, Mary Shell, who was the CLG coordinator back
for
in
like
the day.
25 years.
Yeah, she knows a lot, and she's going to be able to offer some other resources as well. So thank y'all again for being here. To the attendees, thank y'all for attending. Our next Lunch and Learn will actually be my birthday, November 9th. So we'll have Mary Shell here from the Alabama Communities for Excellence. And actually, I have to go jump on a meeting for Aliceville with ACE now. So
Okay.
thank y'all, and y'all have a good
Thanks for
afternoon.
having us.
Thanks for having us. Anybody reach out if y'all ever need any questions, just contact us. Bye.
See y'all.
Have a good day.